You are listening to the Next Play podcast, the playbook for high-performing leaders who want to exceed their full potential. From walking on the Ole Miss football team at 5'7", 150 pounds and earning a full D1 scholarship, to coaching thousands around the world and working with massive organizations like IBM. I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me as I interview some of the most successful people so you too can learn how to focus on always moving forward by deciding, planning, and executing on the next play relentlessly. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to overcome the 1 yard line syndrome. We're going to be talking about what it is. And if you haven't heard of it, I can't believe you haven't heard of it. It's super. No, I'm just kidding. I totally made it up. But it's something that when I explain this to you, you're going to be like, oh my God, I've done this many times, or I know people that do this many times, and it's really crushing. It's sabotaging your success and where you could be. And that's the 1 yard line syndrome. So today we're going to be talking about what it is, how it is, definitely making a big effect on your life, and how to recognize it, why it's important. I'm going to actually share with you a really cool poem that I think you're really going to like. Richie, a poem? Are you serious? Yes, I'm going to share with you a poem and how to overcome it. Okay. So real quick, all of you can see my screen right now. I think that's important. But let's rock and roll. So, and if you're listening to this and you don't have visual, that's fine too. I'm going to explain it as best as possible. So let's jump right into it. The 1 yard line syndrome. What is it? This is where you get so close to something, so close to the end of whatever you're trying to finish, right? And so here's what happens. You either come to the belief that you don't have what you need to achieve it. Okay. So you don't have what you need to achieve it. That's like the big one, is you don't know what you need to achieve it, or just think that you don't have what it takes to finish. So those are the two biggies, right? Like a lot of times, and you could think in your own lives of things that you were attempting and you're like, oh my God, I don't have what it takes. Or you don't believe you are inadequate enough to be able to finish, right? So then you quit, and you hear people say all the time, like, oh my God, they quit right when they were on the 1 yard line. If they would have just tried one more time, they would have got it. They would have succeeded. It's like, it's the kid that quit the team right before they needed that kid. And like, he quit and then he was gone, and then they didn't have someone to fill a position. You see this all the time. Or the job right when they were going to get the promotion, they quit because they never thought they would get the promotion. This happens all the time. This probably has happened to you, where you're in position, you're going to do something, and you're just like, oh my, and then boom, you quit and you stopped. And actually, I saw this recently. It was a really good podcast, and this guy was telling the story about this big business that he was working on, and he had been putting together for a really long time, and he just couldn't get any traction, so he quit. And then like a year later, he saw somebody with the same idea and executed it and was successful. And it's very frustrating, right? So right on the 1 yard line, and they quit, right? So what is this? It's the curse. I call it the curse, whatever. How do you recognize it, right? Because essentially at some point in our lives, we've all had it, but how do you recognize it? All right. It's always when, of course, you're on the 1 yard line. It's always when you have nothing left in the tank, when you have given up on yourself, when everybody has given up on you. It's the ones that always take one more step that get the goal. It's always when you feel that way, when you're like, oh my God, I have nothing left in the tank right now. Like nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going right. I'm never going to get to this next step. When everybody else has given up on you, or you've given up on yourself, or right about to give up on yourself, that means you're on the 1 yard line. And if you take that step and quit, you have the 1 yard line syndrome, right? Whenever you say, I'm never going to get past this point, it's like right in that moment. It's the craziest thing. So quick story. I'm going to share two, a little football one and a pandemic one, but this story is really important. So my first 3 years at Ole Miss, year 1, I got my ass kicked. Year 2, we went into the Cotton Bowl, and I was supposed to like maybe get to dress, but I couldn't dress. So I had to sit on the sidelines. Everyone was wearing their pads, and I had my jersey, and I was kind of like off to the side. And it happened again, my 3rd year. And we actually ended up going to the same bowl game, the Cotton Bowl. I went over there. I didn't get to dress. I had to wear my jersey and stay on the sidelines. It was really embarrassing, to be quite honest. And we're talking over the course of 3 years. And at that point, I was on the 1 yard line, right? I knew the coaches didn't believe in me. I didn't believe in me at that point. Like, I was never going to get anywhere. And I truly wanted to quit. Like, I wanted to be done so bad. And it's always at this point. And it was at this point in that scenario. And same thing with during the pandemic. And I'll finish these stories in a second. During the pandemic, everything was shut down. All of my consulting and speaking was shut down. My facility was shut down. And it was in that moment when I ended up being in a lawsuit, which I'd never been in my life. And I wanted to quit, right? And I felt like nobody believed in me at that point. I was like, I don't even believe in myself at this point. And it was dark. It was a very, very dark place. The 1 yard line is a very dark place. Like in a football game, when you're on the 1 yard line, you bring the big boys out. Like, it's dark. Like, it's a very, very dark place. This is not a place for finesse. This is a place for smash mouth. Like, it's not easy. It's a not easy place. And that's where the 1 yard line is. And that's where the 1 yard line syndrome is created, is developed, is formed. Right. And so there's this never quit mentality that you see everywhere. And it's bullshit because you can't teach it. Right. I could sit here until I'm blue in the face, Andres and Bill and Fila and Zach, and I could say to you, never quit, never stop what you're doing. If you never quit, you'll win. But that's not really that's stupid, because first of all, you've heard it many times. Second of all, it may be motivating, but it may be motivating for only a minute. Right. But how do you not quit? And in reality, saying never quit to somebody actually makes it worse, because it's annoying. Because it's funny, the people that always say to never quit are the people that have already made it, are already good to go. Yeah, maybe they didn't quit. Obviously, they didn't quit, but they had to go through steps to not quit. It wasn't just like, hey, never quit, right? And so we're going to go over those steps today, but it's just annoying. It's frustrating. Like, whenever you're in a position where you want to quit, the last thing you want is somebody who's successful doing nothing, lecturing you about not quitting, right? Like, let's just be real. It's annoying hearing other people say that. And at this moment, all you're thinking about is all your past failures, how you're never been worthy of anything. And so you really live in that moment. You live in that 1 yard line syndrome, right? So why is this such an important topic, and why is this important to know when you have it? Okay. So let's look at it from a big picture. And I was actually very hesitant to put this picture here because it is scary, and it's scary for a lot of people, but I think it's still important, right? It's a picture of a hospital bed if you're listening to this and you're not watching. And so at some point in time, we're all going to be laying here, right? And it's considered our deathbed. And it's important for us to understand this concept, because we will be here. And when we're here, we will be thinking about all the things that we wanted to do, that we wanted to have, whatever's fulfilling. It may be helping other people and whatever. And you quit at it. and you never actually gave it a chance. Now, there's a difference between quitting because you've given it a chance, you finished your commitment, and it's over, right? We'll talk about that. That's different. But quitting in the middle of a commitment, when you said you were going to give something a try, when you said you were going to go all in for a certain period of time for, to see the end result, and you quit beforehand, that's what we're referring to right now. This is when there's a Les Brown, if you've ever heard of him, he's absolutely amazing. And he shared the story of someone that was laying on their deathbed, and they had all the ghosts of all of the things that they wanted to do, all of the things that they started and never finished, or they never even started because they didn't think they were worthy. And it was really, really powerful. And that is why this is so important, because at some point in time, you will be laying on your deathbed. We all will. And the question you have to be able to ask yourself right now is, did you give it a go? Did you try at what you want all the way until the end? Did you finish the commitment that you made? Whether it's a commitment to yourself, a commitment to your team, your colleagues, your kids. That's what never quitting is. It's about finishing a commitment, because there's never quit forever. That's impossible, right? And I think we have to clarify that. And I don't know why people don't do that. I really don't. Why don't people do that? It's like crazy, but you got to clarify it. And so I'm actually going to share with you a poem right now because it's really, really good. It's by this guy, Edgar Guest. I heard it when I was, roughly 5th, 6th grade. Okay. Failed 5th grade. I was really, really bad. I came across this poem actually, and it was printed on top of a Wayne Corbett photo. And I still have it. It's actually upstairs. I should have grabbed it, but I have it, and it's really cool. And I used to read this poem all the time, like all the time. And I think it's definitely had a massive impact on the ability to keep going, right? To finish a commitment, right? If you have a 3-month commitment, a 6-month commitment, you are on a team and you want to quit before the season's over, that type of commitment, right? Because that's what we're referring to. So this brings it home, all right? When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, and the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a failure turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night slipped down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when you are hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. This poem really, really, really hits home on how a lot of us feel as we go through commitments in our life. And if you look back at some of your previous commitments in your life, when you did stop, and then you saw somebody else come in or something else come in and finish the commitment and get or have or do what you wanted. It's really, really wild, but it's really, really true. He says success is failure turned inside out. That's really what it is, right? And we talk about completely eliminating failure by always moving forward, by always moving forward, by always moving forward. And that's how you keep going, right? Like that's how you keep going. The past doesn't matter. What matters is that you learn from it, you move forward, and you go. And so, I've read this poem so many times. I had this Wayne Corbett picture up for so long, and it made a massive impact. And so, you could check this out. It's by Edgar Guest. It's called Keep Going. If you Google it, I mean, it's everywhere. But it's really powerful, right? So let's real quick talk about how to cure the syndrome, because no matter how powerful and true that poem is, what does it tell you to do? It tells you not to quit. And that doesn't help, right? Is it an amazing poem? 100%. Does it hit home? Absolutely. Whenever you want to quit, it's a great poem to read. However, we need to cure the syndrome. Number one, you don't know what you don't know. All right. One really cool thing is I was speaking with somebody who I get to speak with roughly about once a month. He's about 10 times ahead of where I'm at right now. And one thing he said is stop, the questions that you ask are some of the is a indication of where you are at along the journey. And so one thing he said is, instead of being so quick to ask questions when you want help, is to ask the people that you want help from, what should I be asking? Because you don't know what you don't know. It's really powerful. Like, do it with your boss at work. But it's really cool. And I've actually tried it with a few people, and they're like, oh my God, like, that's a really good question. And you don't know what you don't know, and you can't see what you can't see, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you can't see what you can't see. So if you're in the midst of something, if you're so deep in it and you're on the 1 yard line and everything just keeps going wrong, then it's very easy to quit. It's very easy. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to take a step back. I need you to take a step back, bird's eye view. Okay. Where are you now compared to where you were a little while ago? And this is important. Like, I had to have this because we're making some transitions, and, I've you get frustrated at certain things. And then sometimes you got to take a step back and look and be like, whoa, this is where I am compared to like 2 years ago or a year ago, right? 5 years ago. That's a big one. So Andres, Bill, Fila, Zach, like, where were you 5 years ago compared to where you are now? Like, even though you're frustrated, even though things aren't going well, take a step back. Where were you then? Look how much you've grown to this point. So back to the example of Ole Miss at the Cotton Bowl. At that point in time, I thought it was over. I had been to 3 years. I got my ass kicked. I was never going to get to play in a game. I only had 1 year left. And it felt so far away to ever get that opportunity. There's too many guys in front of me. There was new recruits coming in. But then over the summer before my senior year, this was it. Boom. A spot opened up on special teams. I had no idea, like, there was, that I would be able to fit into the depth chart. And then boom, I got a spot as the holder. And I was automatically on the travel squad now. I was like, automatically get to go to play in all the games. Now, I wanted to play offense, but that was my in. And it went from 3 years of ass kick, never going to play, no chance on the depth chart, to just sticking with it and finding a spot. The same thing with the pandemic example. It was like, oh my God, everything was shut down. But I realized at that point in time that I was there for a reason. And the 7 years or really at that point, it was like almost 10 years or 9 years of entrepreneurial time had given me the skill sets to be able to come in, learn from it, and crush it during that period. And it was because I took a step back. And so I want you to take a step back from where you were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and realize that you've become a better person. You're stronger, and you might not feel that way, but just look at who you were back then and look at where you are now. Number two, you have to pass the measurable test. You have to have measurables. Okay, so people say never quit. It's very easy to never to quit when you have too many different things going on, right? But let's just use fitness for example, right? Most people here are in the fitness game, and it's very easy, or in the sales game, and it's very easy to understand. Okay, so if you are trying to figure out why you're not losing weight or why it's not working for you, but you're not measuring your body fat, you're not writing down all of your lifts, you're not writing how many times you're doing it per week, and you're not measuring it, then you have no idea what to fix. You have no idea what to get better at. So you have to have measurables, right? Body fat, weight, conversion rate, how many date nights you're going out on, how many, it doesn't matter, right? This is what I would say most people are missing. Measurables alone, though, listen to me closely on this. Measurables alone, though, aren't enough. You must have measurables that are tracked over time. So like you have to be able to view it. So like your weight once a week, or your conversion rate once a week, or how many calls you're making once a week versus how many people are answering. Like it has to be tracked and measured over time. You can't just throw it into a notebook. So for the people that have measurables, awesome. And then there's these people that have measurables, but they're just all over the place. So they have to be like in an order. And that's like, and that's how you know like how to improve. Because, okay, here's the deal. If you're measuring something and you see it's going down, but there's other areas that are going up, you know what to fix. But if everything's going down and you've finished your commitment, then then you have to say at some point in time, hey, like you can't just never quit at anything, right? Like, could you imagine if I was still trying to get into the NFL right now? Like that's unrealistic. That's crazy. That's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Like at some point in time, it got to a point where I was like, that's not going to happen. However, I want to use the skills that were developed in order to do that. And same for you. You might be like, hey, like this just one thing is just never going to happen. Now, if it has to do with like work and getting to a place, or your body and getting to a place, that's not an excuse. You can get there. All right. With the right, that's a topic for another day. You can get there. Right. So what are your measurables, and are you tracking them? Not only are you tracking them, but are you tracking them in order? That's by far the most important piece. So you know what you're doing, you know what to fix, you know to have improve. You can see improvement. Sometimes you feel like you're just doing terrible when you're in the day. It feels terrible. But then when you look at it over the course of the week, you're like, wow, I had a better week than last week. How many times does that happen to you? Right? Happens all the time. You're like, oh man, last week was a nightmare. And then you look and you're like, whoa, it was better than the week before. But if you're not tracking it and it feels emotionally like a nightmare, what are you going to do? You're going to quit. You're going to quit. Which brings me to the third piece, and that's the accountability test. All right. And so I want to share a quick story with you. When I must have been 8 or 9 years old. Finally, when I was done, I was like, I had it up to here with baseball. I was ready to be done. And my next play in my mind was to quit the team. And my dad basically said to me, he's like, you can't quit the team. And I was like, well, I don't want to play anymore. He's like, that's fine, but you made a commitment to finish the game, finish with the team. So you have to finish. And I was like, well, I want to quit. And he's like, you made a commitment, finish the commitment, and then you can quit. And to him, that was not quitting. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like you made a commitment. He goes, you made a commitment to this team, finish. And I can't tell you how many kids and people I know where they make commitments to things and then they don't like it anymore. And their parents are like, oh yeah, you can quit. You could stop. Like that's not doing any good. I have to say that one lesson is probably a big reason for what happened at Ole Miss and what's happened in business and all this is because of that lesson where he didn't let me quit when I wanted to be done. Like I was like, this is done. Like I want to be done. And he said, you have to finish your commitment. And that was my accountability at the time. All right. If you want to collapse time frames, then having someone understanding your measurables and keeping on you is invaluable, right? Now, my dad didn't know my measurables, but he kept on me. He kept taking me to practice. Even though he didn't want to do it, he did it because he wanted me to learn the damn lesson that you have to finish the commitment. And so I'm here to tell you, you've got to finish the commitment. If you've made the commitment to yourself that you want to become, at a management level, or you want to be the top salesperson, or you want to have a specific body, if you can't stop until you finish the commitment. And you do that by taking a bird's eye view, right? You do that by having measurables, and you do that by having somebody making sure and watching your measurables every single week. It does not work if you don't do that. And I've said this many times, and I've really started to push this because after the last few years, I truly believe this. And that's that goals alone do not work. Goals do not work alone. Goals with a plan and accountability crush. And there was a study that came out that said, if you have to meet somebody or if you have to submit something once a week and it is on your calendar, you have a 95% greater chance of success. Like, that's insanity. Now, it doesn't put a timeline to it, but this is a well-known study, like peer-reviewed, well-known, very good. Goals do not work, right? Alone. Goals with a plan and accountability crush. And that's why measurables and having a bird's eye view and having somebody else also with that bird's eye view is going to help you get there by doing what? Collapsing time frames so you get there quicker, right? So you get there quicker. And so my dad would not let me stop. He wouldn't let me stop. And sometimes having somebody who knows you and not let you stop is what can save you. Like, I would not be here speaking with you today if that did not happen. So how many times in your life have you stopped before you should? Think about all the times in your life right now that you've stopped before you should, and where you could be if you didn't. We all have had these moments. Now, I shared with you the pandemic and the Ole Miss one, but there's other moments, one specifically that's really come to surface, and it's a massive frustration for me because I did stop. And so bringing this to the forefront is now something that you can never stop again. And you can never let your kids stop again because you're aware, right? I wasn't totally aware, but now there's full awareness. So where are you now? What's your measurable you're tracking weekly, not just all over the place? And who's holding you accountable to that measurable weekly? Goals are weekly. Vision is long-term. Yearly goals and all, like, to me, that's nonsense. It's ridiculous. Goals are weekly. Vision is long-term. This is how you cure the 1 yard line syndrome. You'll never get stuck on the 1 yard line again. You'll always be the one that takes the one step and gets in the end zone, because the one that gets in the end zone gets the dream, gets the goal, gets the vision, lives the life that they want to do, that they want to live. And not only do you score that touchdown, but you score the next one and 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 the next one. And you become a touchdown scoring machine, right? And it never stops. It never ends. So what is your next play? What is your next play this week? How can you simply implement this and never get stuck on the 1 yard line again? Because you're going to put your pads on, your helmet on, and you're going to go full force through the A gap, right into the end zone every single time. Every single time. And of course, as always, take absolute relentless action on that next play over and over and over and over again. So it's very simple.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Play podcast. If you liked the show, make sure to leave us a review. For more resources, visit relentlessuniversity.com or download the free Relentless University app. And if you're interested in having me speak at your next event, visit relentlessrichie.com. Until next time.